Friday afternoon as summer winds down. Finally, Friday is being brought to you this week by Major Spoilers VIP and Patreon members from around the world. You can show your support for everything that Major Spoilers does by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Well, happy Friday to you, dear Spoilerites, who are live in the chat here at twitch.tv/Major Spoilers. Kevin's there. Malone is there. Milo is there. Milo Binder? Milo Binder? Hope you're having a good Friday. Oh, it's Jimmy. Jimmy! Couple of things to talk about, including some thoughts I've been having if I had an infinite supply of monies. You know, when you win that big lottery jackpot, the one that sets you up for life and sets Major Spoilers up for life. Talk more about those dreams in just a little bit. But I had a chance today. I guess it's available today. First, maybe it popped up yesterday. The Boys on Amazon Prime, based on the Garth Ennis series. Dickerson, the artist, I believe, on that one. Over at Dynamite Entertainment, it's been running. It ran for a long time over at Dynamite Entertainment. And now is an original series over at Amazon. I had a chance to watch the first 3 episodes. And I will say this. It's exactly what you expect The Boys to be. If you've read the comic book, then you know what you're getting into. Lots of bloody violence, lots of nudity, lots of corrupt superheroes and people trying to take them down. Yeah, regular dudes versus superheroes is what it is. And I found it interesting. Now, I'm not saying that I found it, I don't know. I'm not going to declare it the greatest thing since sliced bread, that's for sure. But I found it as interesting as The Umbrella Academy. 3 episodes in, I find it maybe just a little slow in places, but Umbrella Academy was kind of that way as well. I think there's a slow burn to this. Simon Pegg is in it. Unfortunately, he does not play Wee Huey. He plays Wee Huey's father, and there are a couple of times where his accent slips as he's trying to do the English accent. He's around quite a bit in the first 3 episodes. I don't know beyond that, because like I said, I only watched the first 3 episodes. But I thought it's okay. The special effects are certainly much better than, what was that series on the PlayStation Network? Brian Michael Bendis's, was it Superpowers? Or Powers? Yeah. The effects much, much better than that series. Yeah, you guys know. Much, much better than that. So if you've got the Amazon Prime and you have read the Boys comic books, you're going to know exactly what you're getting into. So there won't be any surprises there. They are doing, I think, some slight tweaks to the story. And that's interesting and that's good. Because if it was just a straight up adaptation, I think it wouldn't be as interesting to the hardcore fans. Well, look, there's the J. Michael T. has just rolled in. He's been talking all afternoon about his new souped-up video game machine. He's going to sit down and he's going to play some Yo Noid. Maybe some Joust later. How you doing? It has been a crazy month for me. You know, I was off for a week in Kansas City with my son as he did soccer practice. Then we had the build up to Comet. Then there was another soccer camp that he was in that had me very busy. Then he was in. Then we had San Diego Comic-Con, and then this last week, for those of you that were on the live stream last Saturday, I told you about the nasty injury to my toe. I have done no exercise, and I've eaten horribly this last month. And I feel awful about it. I think I've put on like 6 pounds in a month. Blech. It's going to change, though, ladies and gentlemen. Back on Monday, we're going to get back to it. Back to the walks, back to the healthy eating. Not as much junk food. Because I got to tell you, a month of just like eating out and, oh man, I went back to sodas in the last couple of weeks because of San Diego to try to get the energy up. And it's just been awful. I went, 6-7 months without sodas, and then July hit, and everything went to crap. Buh. That's okay. We're going to fix that going into the back half of the year, starting on Monday. That gives me, a couple of days to still just cut loose and have fun and one last party. Speaking of one last party, well, it's not his last one, but Quentin Tarantino's 9th film is out this weekend, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Some people say it is very Quentin Tarantino. Some people say it's maybe not the best story, which I've kind of always had a problem with the story once I found out what it was about. But when it comes to the visuals and really, instead of just a movie, instead of just a film, I've seen many people declare this one of the great pieces of cinema, even though the story may not be great. And I'll be honest, I was never a fan. I've never been a huge fan of Inglourious Bastards because of the way that it skews history and changes history for, whatever purposes. And the fact that that's kind of seems to be what's going on right here in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with the Manson family murders. So I think that that's going to be the most troubling bit about that, is how much of that horrendous event and the horrible bits of history are going to be changed to accommodate someone's story. Have you guys seen it yet? Has anyone in the chat seen it? I'm going to try to clear my schedule to go see it this week. And of course, I would go see it tonight, but I've got to edit a Critical Hit episode for you guys. I think it's been downhill from Kill Bill, says Malone. I don't know, because I really enjoyed Hateful Eight as this sprawling whodunit western, right? If you think about Hateful Eight as a Agatha Christie locked room murder, then suddenly Hateful Eight really kind of comes together, except for maybe that last final bit. But I really enjoyed how well they did that. I did, for those of you that have been keeping track, I did do a huge playthrough return to the Quentin Tarantino films, and I watched them all in order, got up to Hateful Eight, finished that. No, I didn't even get to Inglourious Bastards. I skipped Inglourious Bastards, went right to Hateful Eight. And so now I'm ready for Tarantino's 9th film. He has said that he's been working on this Star Trek script, and he said he would be very happy at this point if this was his 10th and final film. I wonder, though. At one point, Kevin Smith said he was going to no more do films. Is that the proper way to say it? That he wasn't going to do films anymore? And then he came back and started doing indie films. So I wonder if Tarantino, if he does end up directing this Star Trek film, if when it's done, he's like, nope, I'm out. I'm retired. Goodbye, everyone. Or if, in a couple of years, he's like, you know what? I know I said that was my last one, but I still got more stories in me that I want to tell and I want to direct. Pulp Fiction was such a hard act to follow. It gets better with each watch. Not so the other ones for me, says the one, J. Michael T. I can see where you're coming from on that. It really is, especially when you look at, like, Jackie Brown, which came out right after Pulp Fiction. A lot of people really like Jackie Brown. I didn't find it as interesting, mainly because it was an adaptation of an Elmore Leonard story, right? Get Shorty guy. And when you realize that it's an adaptation of the works of the same guy that did Get Shorty, and you kind of know how he structures his stories, then when you watch Jackie Brown, you're like, oh yeah, this is very much not a true Quentin Tarantino story. And then what was after Jackie Brown? Was that Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2? Yeah, that's fun. You know, that's fun, straight-up kung fu stuff. I can see why some people really enjoy that. I think Volume 1 is much better than Volume 2 in that sense. And then what was that? Then it was Inglourious Bastards, and then Hateful Eight. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, only because I've seen the other Once Upon a Time films. You know, Once Upon a Time in America, Once Upon a Time in the West. I haven't seen the third, that was supposed to be the third in that trilogy of films. But I think Tarantino trying to do that kind of same kind of let me tell a mythical story set around these events is ambitious. And I hope it plays off. I really do. So I'm going to try to go see that maybe tomorrow night. Malone says he can do anything he wants, and I think he's too big of a film fan not to be inspired by something new and wanting to do something again. That's my guess. But you know, he takes a lot of time between his films. Between Jackie Brown and Kill Bill Volume 1, I had moved, and again, I use this as my frame of reference for so much. I was living in Atlanta, moved to California, moved to Kansas, met my wife, and got married by the time Kill Bill Volume 1 had come out. I'm pretty sure, if I've got my timelines correct on Kill Bill Volume 1, that's when that came out. So we'll see. It's always a treat. It always gets you hyped up. He always brings a unique vision to storytelling. And of course, one of the nice things about being someone who creates a unique style, and certainly Quentin Tarantino has a very unique directing style and a very unique eye towards what makes good story. One of the things that's interesting about that is he inspires a whole new generation of film students, of, I don't want to say wannabes, of people who are inspired to work in movies and film. Because when I was in Atlanta working at a private university teaching video production, a lot of those kids had come in just loving Jackie Brown and wanted to be the next Quentin Tarantino's. Which is funny because when Pulp Fiction came out, I know there were a bunch of people my age that were like, oh yeah, I want to be the next Quentin Tarantino and tell those films. And you see it with every generation, right? There's somebody that I want to be like J.J. Abrams. I want to be like Steven Spielberg. I want to be like George Lucas. I want to be like Martin Scorsese. I want to be like, what's his name? 2001: A Space Odyssey. Stanley Kubrick. I want to say Kubrick, but that's a toy. That's those little figures, the Kubricks. It's funny how we use pop culture as a frame of reference. Kevin says that's how I remember my anniversary too, Avengers 2: Age of Ultron, or get married. Well, it sounds like you made the better choice, right? Because Age of Ultron, blah. So I don't know what popped into my head a couple of weeks ago. Oh, it's not a couple of weeks ago. It's been about a month ago. Since before, this would have been back in June. Sometimes, you know, I try to like fantasize and plan ahead, and you build that vision board in your mind. Actually, I think you're supposed to build an actual vision board. But for those of you who have been following me for years, know that there's a place in Lawrence, Kansas, that if I had the money, and I'm talking lottery winning money, that there's a building on Massachusetts Street, there in Lawrence, Kansas, you know, the big shopping historic area in downtown Lawrence. that I would love to rent out that whole upper, and I think there may even be a third floor, but that whole second floor, make that the Major Spoilers HQ, and let the lower floor be the retail store. But I was in Lawrence not too long ago, and I happened to go past that store, and we went in, we looked around, my wife was looking for some clothes. And I noticed that that was a huge space on that first floor. And I began thinking to myself, actually, I say Stephen. Stephen? And I'm like, yes? If you won that big lottery and you could rent out this whole building for the Major Spoilers HQ, what would you do with that first floor? And I had to stop and think about all the bits of ephemera and pop culture history that we collect as fans, as, collectors. Wouldn't it be neat to use a portion of that first floor as a gallery, as maybe a little mini museum? And I really didn't think of it maybe in terms of museum as a gallery that the exhibit would constantly change, like an art gallery type thing. And how this art gallery would feature pop culture and comic book stuff. And I even boiled it down to, what is something, like, give me an example. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, what are you talking about, Stephen? Give me a clearer example of what you mean by this comic book and pop culture gallery. Imagine, if you will, Main Street, USA, a nice big brick building. And right outside, a big sign announcing the current exhibit. And it's called King Kirby. And as you look through the double doors of the entrance of this place, you see that Jack Kirby face, the portrait. You all know the one. That big crop portrait of Jack Kirby's face just fills up that whole wall so that you can see it walking by. You can see Jack Kirby's face. So you go in, you go to the right or to the left, it doesn't matter. But I see this kind of designed into 4 major areas. Jack Kirby's life. Talk about who Jack Kirby is. Talk about him growing up. You've got photographs, you've got letters, you've got, stories that are there of Jack Kirby's life. Then you talk about Jack Kirby at Marvel, and you talk about all the creations that Jack Kirby had. And part of being a good curator of this gallery / museum would be working with people who have original Jack Kirby art that would be able to go on display in either the Marvel or the DC or both sections. And you can just go through and you can see all this stuff that Jack Kirby has created over his life. In fact, I thought the coolest thing would be the Hall of Heroes, the very last thing as you're going to the final exhibit, where you just have, all of the characters that Jack Kirby created as some kind of mural that you can put up on the wall. And then the very, very last exhibit, if you guys can go find this online, because it just looks, it's humbling when you see it. And I don't know if it still exists or where it might be, but go and look for a picture of Jack Kirby's art desk. The place where he created everything that is based on what we have today. And it's just this little art table. And it's a little stool and a little rickety cabinet. It's stained with ink and paint. It's just like, it looks like if you were to see this on the corner of a street, you would assume that it's trash. And so you go through and you're just elevating Jack Kirby to this status, this high status of how great he is. And then you see all the creations and you've learned about him. And then you see before you in this little corner, the piece de resistance, his actual art table. And to me, that would be an incredible experience. And I know what you're thinking. Stephen, because I asked myself this too. Stephen, you said that first floor was huge, and Jack Kirby is a huge guy and did a lot of great things. But that would probably only occupy about half of this retail space for this gallery. What would you do with the other half? And I said, Stephen, there's a simple answer. you convert that other half into a 50-seat theater. Okay? You see a lot of these small theaters in and around Hollywood. People do a lot of their podcast recordings there. And this would be a place where, yes, we could do Major Spoilers podcast stuff. We could do Critical Hit Live, but a little 40 to 50 seat theater. And then we tie the theater into the gallery. Not so that you can go watch Avengers movies or anything like that. Maybe occasionally you'd show some classic films and then do a Zach on Film on it right there from the same theater. But I think the other thing that makes a museum and a gallery really, really work is how you program around that gallery to get people to come down to the gallery. So imagine opening night, you go in, you spend an hour walking around, looking at all the exhibits, looking at all the art, and then you go into the theater that's next door, and you have a presentation by, I think it's Jack Kirby's great-grandson, who is running his Twitter and Instagram account. If you've never seen the Jack Kirby Instagram account, it's great. This guy's been, talks about I think it's his grandson, talks about his grandfather and all the memories that he had and shows photographs and all this stuff. And then also on the same night, you have Mark Evanier, who is the Jack Kirby biographer, one of the Kirby biographers, come out and talk for an hour or so about the life of Jack Kirby. And then the next week, you bring in scholars. You bring in a scholarly presentation to talk about Jack Kirby and his influence on life and pop culture and all those kinds of things. Third week, you get someone like a Paul Levitz to come in, or Dan DiDio, or even a Joe Quesada, to come in and also talk about the influence of Jack Kirby on comic books as a business. It'd be great to get a DiDio and a Quesada to sit side by side on that theater stage and talk about that. And then I think this would be the best one of, I know you're thinking, oh my God, that's 3 great presentations, 3 weeks. What do you do on the 4th week? You bring someone in from the CIA to talk about Argos and how Jack Kirby helped get those hostages out and the role that he played in getting the hostages out in the 1970s. And that's your month of programs plus that gallery. The gallery would be free because it would be underwritten by, Major Spoilers, who has all the money. But those events would be a ticketed event, limited to 50, fill up the house. And that's how you kind of offset some of the, not all the costs. You're never going to offset any of the costs, but you'd offset some of the cost of the actual programming. At the end of the month, you take the gallery down, and then 2 weeks later, you open it up with something else. Something like a costumes from comics to film. The costumes of superheroes. And again, you go and you work with the studios. You bring in costumes from some of the films. You find a Superman. You could find a Darth Vader. You could find, all the costumes, original costumes. You bring those in. You set those up in the exhibit. And again, you do the programming where you bring in somebody that works on costumes. You bring in maybe some cosplayers to do, bring in a Bill Duran to do a thing on cosplaying. And you just keep doing that. You keep switching it out. Like every 6 weeks, there's a new opening for a museum that's there for 1 month and then it's gone. And you've got that 1 month to go in and see that. And maybe, over the course of 2 or 3 years, you would be able to start to do some repeats. But for the most part, you've got that one chance to go and see it. I've seen one that sounds like the one you're describing. That would be a cool pick on a frame. My wife and I found an Alice Museum in San Francisco that was doing a Jim Starlin exhibit a year ago. It was really cool. Definitely not on the scale of what you're discussing, but still nice to see. And then other people saying it's really... there's a current exhibit, the Teenage Youth Culture in Comics, which covers stuff all the way from the classic Archie up to modern stuff like Lumberjanes. It's called the Cartoon Art Museum. If you're ever in San Francisco, it's a neat place. Yeah, things like that. No, it would be, and the thing is, and so this is what you would need. Not only would you have to have the money to be able to do this, and you would have to have a good curator. You'd have to get somebody that understands gallery and museum curation. You would have to have a small staff. You would have to hire security guards to man the place 24/7, especially if you're dealing with, in some cases, millions of dollars of original art. Security cameras, all that stuff, and then the insurance, I'm sure, would be through the roof to do something like this on a, busy downtown area. And then to make it free to the public, I think would be just super, super cool. That's just one of the crazy dreams I had about a month or so ago, back in June, when I was like, oh man, what else would you do? What could you do to give back to the community besides just, bringing money into the community from your business? And then, for those of you who went to the San Diego Comic-Con, maybe you got to see the Batman experience that was powered by AT&T, which was literally a pop-up museum, a pop-up Comic-Con museum at Balboa Park. It was there just for the week. They brought in a ton of Batman stuff from the movies, from the comics. Let's see, what did they have? They had the Dark Knight Dive, a VR skydiving experience. They had the Batcave Gaming Lounge. They also had large-scale film and television props worn by Michael Keaton in the Batman movies, as well as stuff from Batman Returns. They had a Rogues Gallery Rumble and a whole bunch more. And then that's where they showed off that 6-foot-tall Batman statue based on the 100th black and white Batman statue that Todd McFarlane drew based on his art. But how cool would that be? Would that be something that you would go out of your way, that if you know what the programming was going to be for a year, like, oh, in September, they've got a Stan Lee tribute. We need to plan a vacation to where we could go do that. Or, if you knew that was in your area, would you drive an hour or 2 hours or more to go visit that museum, even though you'd probably be done in an hour or so? There would be a very cool, you could do a Legion of Superheroes one. You could really literally do almost anything with the idea that it's a gallery, people come in, you observe. Yes, I'm sure there's going to be people that are like, hey, I want to take my picture with the costumes or whatever. But that it's a space for people to come in and appreciate what pop culture is there. And then the fact that it's a limited time, like literally a month. There's programming tied to it, and then it's gone. I think that'd be cool. Maybe we can get to that someday. Whether we do it through winning the lottery, which would be a dream come true, or whether we do it with support from fine people like our patrons. Or whether we hit partner level status on our live streams and we get money coming in that way, or any of the other number of ways things can go on. History and culture, all good stuff, says Kevin. I would absolutely spend full day's trip to see something like that, says Malone. So I think that's the thing. Not just to buy the top floor of a building, but to buy the entire building. And make that first floor a gallery and a theater for programming and other things. Even if you knew that, hey, every Wednesday night or every Thursday night or every Tuesday night, like a Wednesday night, you could come down and you could see a live recording of Zach on Film. Maybe get to see the film that we're going to talk about. And then once the film is over, we do a live Zach on Film, live on stage. Audience participation, etc., etc., etc. Or come down and watch a live Major Spoilers podcast or Critical Hit show. $40, $50 for 3 to 4 hours of entertainment. That might be a lot of fun. Anyway, sometimes it's good to just kick back. I found my 2019 goals in my Superman journal here. Haven't hit all the goals that I wanted. There's so much more that I have to do. I don't think I've even hit half of these. But it got me thinking, what would you do if you could expand Major Spoilers in any way possible? And I think as long as you're dreaming it, and as long as you're talking about it, and as long as you're sending those vibes out to the universe, maybe it'll happen. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. then your dreams all come true. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening to my little ramblings for the last half hour. My dreams, my glassy-eyed, starry-eyed vision of the future of Major Spoilers. And we're going to do this again next week. Thank you to everybody who showed up in the chat. Lots of good chats going on today. Let's get some more people in this. And it's 5 o'clock somewhere. It's 4 o'clock somewhere. People are East Coast, West Coast, Mountain Time Zone, and Central. Even people in, where are you guys at? You're in Germany and Norway. No, Scandinavia and Australia. Pop in, say hi. And we will see everybody next Friday for another Finally Friday. And I believe, providing that I can get my plate cleared, we will do tomorrow afternoon a game stream. And I'm thinking maybe Gloomhaven, since that is just a early version of Gloomhaven is available now on Steam, that I might crack that out and see how that all goes. That'll be tomorrow afternoon. So let's see how that goes. We'll talk with you soon. Thank you, everybody. You're all wonderful. Remember, do good, be good, read more comics, and stay hydrated. We will see you all again real soon.